you a quote Dubravka said about the role of the siren. I think about a snake, which is not human, but which hypnotizes and bewitches. I used my eyes, and the movement comes from my stomach. I had to perform without any feeling. I approach it like a snake without added chi-chi, which is from, this quote is from Robert Tracy's book on the Balanchine's ballerinas. What do you think about that quote about snakiness?
Well, that's exactly what she tried to convey to me when she was coaching me. You know, all that, that's what it was. It was an evil, but alluring, sinuous, and all those movements, especially, you know, that last movement that your hand is shaped like the snake's head was beautiful. That's what almost what she tried to convey to me, I think.
You also mentioned to Melissa a couple times in the rehearsal to make her movements softer.
Yeah, sort of more drawn out, not staccato, like, you know, more drawn out, and I keep going back to the word sinuous, but it's really descriptive. And yeah, it was, you know, sometimes she was very sort of rather not, she was trying to attract this young boy, you know, do things like that, and so yeah, that was a good point.
So the softness is becoming snake-like.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Softness, you think of, oh, you know, soft, Sophie. No, it wasn't that sort of softness.
Different
it just
kinds.
Wasn't brittle. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was lovely. Yeah.
But then you also mentioned in her attitude turns with the circling arms that her leg needed to be at an angle. And
Yes.
that at that difficult step where she was bending over forward and backward, that she had to make the pattern of a square in space. So there are angles in the pas de deux as well as curvy movements.
Yes, because, you know, all those sort of angles, that costume is all angles, and that decor is so sort of, to me, it's very angular and stark. And so the walking is like in squares, you know, and it was that way and that way and that way. And what was the other one you said?
The attitude turns, her leg and the attitude.
Yes, to have the leg almost at a rectangle. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right angle.
Rather than out here, rather than an open attitude, sort of a la seconde.
So did Dubravka coach you on those two qualities, maintaining the angularity and the softness or the slithering?
Yeah, yeah. She was so particular about those things, the little details, you know. It was marvelous because she'd come into the dressing room at the end of the performance, which was right, you know, when you were just come out of the performance, and you could grasp it. So she remembered, she told me these things. So, yeah.
Can you remember any specific things she told you that you see are lost or changed today?
I find she kept it, I keep going back, she kept it, she wanted to keep it luscious and not hard, and not, that's what I remember most about her. Mm. You know, it wasn't hard and crisp. I just remember it being that it was so much using the back and the shoulders and the eyes. And it never stopped moving, sort of, and that was sort of also that snake feeling, you know, just that coiling, sort of like that. I think that's what she tried to get across to me. That was my sort of memory of it.
So you used the word sinister a few times during the pas de deux and the solo. Did you prepare yourself any certain way before going on stage? Did you think about words like sinister or snake, or did you have imagery you used?
No, I didn't. I don't know what happened, but I just, I loved the role. Well, I loved dancing it, but particularly juicy roles like that. I loved, and I just got into it somehow. I just loved doing it, and I knew what it was all about. And Frank Mounsey, who was my partner, was so receptive, And it just almost came naturally to me,
Well, you mentioned working with your partner, but a couple times you also mentioned you have to be looking around for your goons.
Oh, in the ballet?
Ballet.
Yeah, you sort of look around the goons to see if they're doing the job. Come on, you guys, get away, sort of thing, and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a sort of play back and forth with the whole stage, You get right into it. I mean, that's how I feel it should be done.
What's your relationship, the Siren's relationship to the goons? Are you their queen?
Sort of, yeah.
And I know you've been the queen a number of other times.
Many times. Yeah, afterwards, when Jerry gave me the role of the queen in the cage, from that day on, I was called Queenie. I have little cards from Jerry saying, lots of love, Queenie, lots of love. Yeah, I did a lot. I liked that. I don't know, maybe a typecasting or whatever. I don't know.
Maybe it's your combination of your height and your elegance. You actually also talked about the height difference, the Siren's great height over her Prodigal Son. Of course, that's increased by being on point and wearing the headdress. Was Dubravka a lot taller than Lefar?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, do you know about their height difference?
I don't know, but Lefar wasn't very tall, that's for sure, because I knew Lefar briefly when he came to Australia with the De Basel company. But no, going back to Dubravka, she was quite a bit, yes, she was very long and lean, gorgeous, and he was smaller.
So starting from the beginning in Diaghilev's company, it was protocol for the Siren to be much taller.
Yes, and I'm sure Balanchine wanted that, And it was strange because actually Frank Mounsey was not smaller. He was a big man. I mean, he wasn't terribly tall, but somehow he just made it his own. He was wonderful in it. And then Balanchine tried Robbins and Hugh Lang, and they were right because they were smaller in that sense, but it didn't seem to come off as well. I don't know. It was just maybe Frank Mounsey's artistry. He was such a great artist, lovely, more so than an dancer.
Did Balanchine ever coach the Prodigal Sons?
A little bit. Yeah, well, yes. I would ask him, but he was very, I said, how was it, Mr. Balanchine, was it all right, Yeah, it's very good, it's good, can you, no, it's all right, you just do what you like.
So you didn't get a lot of feedback and coaching from Balanchine?
Via the other people, yeah. I'd say to Betty Cage, why, what do you think did he say anything? Did he think I was terrible, or was I okay, or what? She said, don't worry, he never says anything. He never did say anything. He never said, oh, you're very good. Never. And I don't know, not to me anyhow. But he would say, he'd shake his head, say, good, that's all right, it's all right. But, yeah, he would coach. Every now and again he'd get something in his head and he'd start fiddling around and changing things.
How did you approach the ballet musically? Did you learn counts first, or do you just know the music?
I didn't count it, no. You could hear it. I mean, you know. I just did it. It was what was right musically, at least what it was taught to me musically. 1, 2, da, 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 da. How can you know, some things you have to count. At least I never counted music myself until I got into New York City Ballet, and we did Orpheus. And I had to do the chief bacchante. Oh, well, forget it. But anyhow, that was awful. 1, 2, 1, 2, you know. No. I wasn't any good at that. I hated that.
Counting?
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't remember, you just, do you know how you learned the music?
By hearing it.
Okay. So just experience for this?
Yeah, no, you hear it, you know. And we always had these marvelous pianists playing like Kopeikin.
Well, you mentioned about this step that you were still left a little in the dark about that pounding step where you get down on your knees and suddenly you break.
Yeah, it's just, you know, me. I don't know. He said it's just, you know, you have to be so strong woman, you know.
Oh, you're being a strong woman when you're pounding your chest?
Well, he said things like that, and you pound and you're a strong woman and you under control. You're in control, not under control, in control.
Oh, that's interesting because you have to kneel on the ground and kind of bend over and release that upright posture in order to do that step. So, but you're definitely in control of the whole pas de deux.
Yeah, that's how I felt it, and that's, you know, because I used to ask him, he said, well, you know, he'd tell you things that you sort of, something that you could interpret whichever way you wanted to.
Okay. What other problems or challenges did the costume present? You have the cape and the big hat. And
I didn't find them a challenge, really. What was a nuisance was, as I said before, standing on my dressing room table and having Eddie Bigelow paint after the performance. I stood, you know, while he painted, because you wash the tights and the black paint wears out after, fades away, so you have to, every other performance, you have to paint the tights. And so that was a bit of a pain, but, you know, you can go through it. And, no, cape was fine. Stagehands used to have a competition who was going to hold the cape.
bridesmaid for you?
Huh?
Be your bridesmaid?
Yeah.
So you mentioned at one point to Melissa, I think before they stand in first and lean away, that she should glance backwards to see if anyone's watching when she went from one place to the next. Anyone on stage or maybe an imaginary?
Yes, they're on the table, right? They're from, you mean that one? And they get up and walk around. Oh, they're sitting here. And, you know, she's just keeping track of everything around her, sort of thing. And now I've got him. And they start the pas de deux. Is that what you meant? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to read you something I thought was interesting, an interpretation of the Siren. It's from Balanchine's Complete Stories of the Great Ballets. It says, she meaning the Siren, she seems oblivious to the fact that she is being watched. This dance seems to please her more than it could please anyone else. Do you think that's true?
The pas de deux talking about. Yeah, I think that's very true.
She's an exhibitionist?
Yeah. All the time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That sounds so good.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the the movements, the non-classical movements. You told Melissa to bring her shoulder up with her arms at one point, which is...
Oh, yeah. In other words, do everything you're not supposed to do in ballet.
Where did that come from, the shoulder in particular? Was that something...
From her, you know, how, yeah, I mean, and using the back, but you always do, if you do interpret a role, that sort of role, it sort of almost comes naturally, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, in a ballet, you wouldn't deliberately raise your shoulders most of the time, unless it was called for a...
Well, in classical ballet.
Yeah, in classical
course.
ballet,
No.
for a particular reason.
No.
Or the hands, I know this hand, but was the
Yeah, I
stylized...
didn't like her when she had her hand out like that. It was just a little bit too balletic and too classical. I wanted it more, you know, more like that. I think it was where she was doing the rond de jambe.
Mm-hmm.
That we were corrected. I think she had that out. That looked a bit classical.
So it's deliberately not classical?
What, this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, what about the acrobatic steps? How were those for you?
It was easy because I could do acrobatics, you know, I could bend back and hold my ankles. I was like that, you know. So it was very easy for me. Yeah.
Can you talk about how the sexuality of the whole pas de deux was received in 1950? It must have been pretty radical.
It was. I've heard, yeah, you know.
The way you manipulate the cape through your legs, and it's very
Yeah.
teasing and drawing attention, the hands on the hips
Yeah.
is
Yeah, and
suggestive.
you know, it was not. It was very subtle, and there were some moments that I saw in the new versions that made it very. What is the word? It's just out there.
Graphic?
Graphic. And those are the things that I particularly wanted to point out were not in the original.
Mm-hmm.
And the one part is how they get up into where she wraps her leg around him in the attitude front, and he walks around
Mm-hmm.
with his arms out. The way they do it now is awfully graphic. And the other way is still very sexual, but very subtly done.
Mm.
And that's how it was originally. And then there was the sitting on the head, sitting on knees and the sliding down.
Mm-hmm.
The Prodigal Son is sitting on the floor. And that was another very graphic pose that they've been doing now, which sort of makes you go, ooh.
What was can you describe the difference between the more subtle version and the...
Yeah, well, he's sitting on the floor. She's got to get onto his head, stand, and the graphic pose now that they do is she's in a very wide à la seconde,
Mm-hmm.
turned out with it on toe, and she sits on his head, and I don't know, to me it doesn't look right, and it wasn't that way, and it looked kind of, yeah, oh gosh, you know.
Well, can you tell me then, when you were with de Basil's company and Balanchine came to choreograph Balustrade in 1941, can you tell me a little bit about your encounter with Balanchine then? Was that the first time you met him?
That was marvelous. We were in New York at the 59th Street Theater, I think. Broadway, around there. Anyhow. And yeah, de Basil had commissioned Balanchine to do ballet, and he did Balustrade, which was to the Stravinsky violin concerto. And he had Tumanova, Liskova, others, and the men, and I can't remember now. But anyhow, and I had a little part with Sona Osata. We were two girls, and it was wonderful. We was danced together. We had sort of unitards on. It was like the beginning of this unitard business, and leotards. And he gave this lovely little part, and I was left alone on stage, and I had to do a double pirouette and finish, and then jump over the balustrade. It was like circular, horseshoe type balustrade around, jump over. And that's the first time I ever met Mr. Balanchine. Yeah, he sort of liked me, you know. I guess, I don't know, at that point he was where he liked the tall girls, I guess, because the Russians were smaller, I don't know. And that was the first time I met him. And it was a marvelous ballet. And of course he loved Tumanova and he used her. That was the first time I ever met him, and then I met him 2 more times.
What were those?
Oh, when I was dancing, oh God, I did my whole history. When I was dancing in a little theater, Follies Theater in Mexico, and it's a long story how I got there, and he brought a small company to Mexico. He brought Marijan, Bill Dollar, Nicholas Magianis, Pat Wilde, Yvonne Patterson, and something. And then he was going to take the Mexican company as the corps de ballet. But he needed another principal dancer. So he went to some little studio there where Russian man, Serge somebody, was teaching. And he told him, because I used to go to class there sometimes, he said, there's a girl who dances at the Follies every night, and she's quite good, you know, you could ask her. And so I was dancing at this Follies Theatre. It was you know, it was a ventriloquist and a juggler and then I was the ballerina, you know, did my ballet. And there was a knock on my dressing room door at intermission, and God, I opened the door, there was Balanchine. Of course, I nearly died, you know. And he was, Rucifer was there with him, yeah, and Kopeikin, the pianist, yeah, Marie, oh my God. But anyhow, so he said, oh, I need a dancer, and I'm doing a thing at the base. I said, okay. I said, yeah. And then I called my boyfriend who used to pick me up, and he said, okay, I'm picking you all up and we'll go to the bankers club. He was a banker. And wartime, there was no, you know, hard to get any alcohol or cigarettes or anything. None of those things were available. So Raimundo took us, he had the key, went up to the top of the bankers club on the top of one of the buildings in Mexico, opened up the bar and the big grand piano, and Kopeikin sat down and played the piano, and everybody was having, you know, the best whiskey and the best everything. And we had a ball. That was the second time I met Balanchine. And then we danced at the base after. You know, I did prelude. He needed a girl to do the prelude in Solfège. He was trying to get his company going in those days, you see. And they did Apollo, they did Solfège, and they did Bill Dollar's Ballet. What's it called? And then I went and did my stuff. He went back. I don't know what he did. And then I met him again at the School of American Ballet at Madison Avenue.
Were you a student there?
I went to take a class. And Vladimirov was teaching, and Balanchine was standing in the doorway. And I came out and he said, do you want to be in a company? Because I'm starting a company. I have a company. I said, okay. I've been so lucky, you know. Balanchine taught me how to dance.
What do you mean?
You know, I was a natural dancer. I was sort of, you know, everything came very naturally to me. He taught me footwork, that I never knew before. Because I was RAD and God knows all this other stuff, Cicchetti and RAD, I did everything, you know. But he taught me that wonderful footwork. That's what I teach now.
Did he also stress the upper body, the expression?
I don't remember him doing that with me, but he did what he did, what I still do, a lot is heads. Always those wonderful heads, you know. I make my kids do that all the time. Always, oh yes. No, he had some marvelous things to say. And none of the British, or any of the other in school could pirouette. And Balanchine taught her to pirouette. But Balanchine, yeah, he was amazing. He was quite a, I mean, you know, you didn't love him. He wasn't lovable. He was rather the other way, you know. But you couldn't help but admire the heck out of him. Amazing, yeah.